The draft's in just a couple of days, and I've gone through all the Vegas odds, rumors, and mocks to give you the best idea of what's about to happen. At number 1, the Spurs are on the clock, and they are sprinting to the podium to select one of the best prospects we have ever seen, Victor Wembanyama. There will be no surprises here. At 2, things start to get really interesting. By the time you're watching this, the selection might have already traded hands, but right now, it belongs to the Charlotte Hornets. Everyone goes crazy when it's brought up. However, it did appear the Hornets favored Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson for most of the draft process. Every report suggested that, and most importantly, the Las Vegas odds did. But that might be changing. What has over 80 million downloads and over 650 unique champions? Today's video sponsor Raid Shadow Legends. It's free to play on Android or iOS, and you literally have billions of ways to customize your champions, and you're going to need to do that if you want to defeat the bosses that cause havoc in Raid. Do you want a defensive legendary champion with magic skill, or maybe an attack epic champion with force infinity to do the most damage? But choose your champion wisely. You're going to need the most powerful champions possible to defeat the tense bosses. Then there's the shards, dare I say, the heart and soul of Raid. If these examples aren't enough, the Call of the Arbiter is in full swing now. Raid is adding some new characters. The first one's Artak, a mighty orc lord who is free right now. With all this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, if you guys haven't started playing, use my link in the description or scan my QR code on the screen to get insane bonuses like an epic champion Talia from the Secret Order faction and other useful things like energy refills, skin tone, and XP boosters. Thank you Raid for sponsoring today's video. Scoot apparently had a good workout for them that shortened the gap between the two prospects. Vegas had Brandon Miller to go second at around -300 a few days ago. Over the weekend, it was around -200. Today, it's plus money, and Scoot is the -145 favorite. Now, the change is not just the Hornets becoming more likely to select Scoot, but the increasing chance a team trades up to number 2 and goes with Scoot. The most likely team to do that appears to be the New Orleans Pelicans. Henderson's burst, physicality at the rim, shot creation, and playmaking make him nearly a can't-miss prospect that in some years would run away as the first overall pick. Many have him miles ahead of Miller, but as we get closer and closer to the draft, it doesn't really feel like that's the case for the Hornets. Right now, it's shaping up as this situation where for the Hornets, it's basically a 50-50 shot between these two prospects, but it's nearly a guarantee to be Scoot if this pick trades hands. Now, minds can change right up until Adam Silver calls out that selection. When everyone woke up on draft day last year, Jabari Smith was the big favorite to go first overall to the Magic. But as the day went on, that was changing by the minute, all the way to the point where Paolo became the favorite well before Woj broke any news regarding the situation. We could very well see something similar. My gut says that the Pelicans trade up to 2, but based on the odds, I can't mock that as the most likely outcome right now. With the 3rd overall pick, we've got another team that might not be making this selection, the Portland Trailblazers. It's well known they prefer cashing in this pick in a trade for win-now contributors as they're committed to continuing the Damian Lillard era. The only problem, no one has too much confidence on who will be on the board here, meaning if the selection is moved, it probably won't happen till they're on the clock. If the Hornets stay put and select Brandon Miller, that's where things get interesting. If number 2 is Scoot, the trade market for this pick plummets. But no matter what, we do know one thing, it will be one of those mentioned players, in this case, Brandon Miller. Now we have the Blazers here making the selection, but in the event, the chance he actually suits up in a Blazers jersey or even signs a rookie contract with the Blazers is not all that high. Unless Lillard requests a trade or the philosophy takes a sudden shift in Portland, this pick would likely still be on the move, even if it is Brandon Miller, with teams like the Pacers looking to move up for him. Then we've got the Rockets at 4, again another selection that is not immune to movement. Keep an eye out on teams like the Jazz or Magic, teams with multiple first-round picks that could package them to go up and get a guy at the top of their board. But if the Rockets stay here, we've basically seen a consensus selection since the lottery, that being one of the Thompson twins, Amin Thompson, the twin bringing more of a point guard skill set to the table. While this is the most likely selection, the one we're going to mock here, it is also by no means a guarantee. Right now, Vegas has it at around -150. But just behind him, you've got a guy that's been creeping up the board lately, Villanova's Cam Whitmore. He's put together a really impressive pre-draft process, but the streaking odds don't just stem from Whitmore's rise. It's in combination with the growing chance that Houston targets someone like James Harden free agency. If they feel confident being able to pull off something like that, there's a very real chance we see them go with Whitmore. Now, I would really question the decision to pass on the perfect fit alongside Jalen Green for a guy that would be better on paper if everything goes right in free agency. The 5th overall pick belongs to the Detroit Pistons. Post-lottery, Jarris Walker really seemed like the heavy favorite, but as we mentioned, Whitmore has been climbing and right now really seems like the most likely selection for Detroit here at 5. The Athletic's Sam Vecenie recently said on the most recent episode of the Game Theory podcast that Whitmore's been a guy that's probably moved himself from the 6 to 10 range into the top 5. Now, it's not too hard to see why this is happening. He's bringing some of the most upside to the table in this entire draft. He's a beast of an athlete with a built frame. If the perimeter creation continues to progress, which these pre-draft workouts have indicated, he could truly exceed even this spot. Going to the Pistons, he slots in pretty seamlessly into this roster, playing alongside Cade and Ivy. Now, I think you would have to be a little concerned with the shooting of this team when you also consider the frontcourt options such as Duren, Wiseman, Stewart, and Bagley, but that's not something that should affect this singular selection. Now, what would be an interesting chain reaction is if the Rockets end up going with Whitmore at 4. But now we're on to the 6th pick, where we've got the Orlando Magic, and they're going to go with the other half of the Thompson twins, Ausar Thompson, someone that's bringing more of a wing skill set and a slightly more promising perimeter jump shot than his brother. Now, I don't think we can rule out Jarris Walker here, but Thompson would definitely be the favorite given this current roster. At 7, it lines up perfectly for the Pacers. If that's how the first 6 picks line up, Walker is by far the heavy favorite to go here. The main draw for him is his 6'8" built frame with over a 7'2" wingspan. His versatility and positional flexibility really set the stage for an incredible defensive career. His offense is in the early stages, but still seems to go under the radar. He's a willing 3-point shooter and showed some real shot creation ability on multiple levels, although we are still a long way out from that being a massive part of his game. I really think his special front court would be in the making here with him and Turner. At 8, we've got the Washington Wizards, a team that just made a franchise-altering trade, sending Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. A trade that many might think will have a big effect on this draft selection, but it doesn't really feel like that's going to be the case. The team's been struggling to address the point guard position since the departure of John Wall, and they finally do that here, going with Arkansas point guard Anthony Black, someone that's a high-level playmaker and defender that if the shooting comes, which the pre-draft process has indicated, could really shatter expectations. At 9, we've got the Utah Jazz, who go with Taylor Hendricks. There's a few options here. They could go with one of the 3-point shooting wings, but we should be expecting Hendricks with the slight change of Grady Dick. Hendricks is bringing the same level of top-end upside that a lot of guys in this range are, but his floor is extremely high. He's quick on both ends, at a 6'9", 7'1" wingspan frame. As a freshman, he shot 39% from 3 this season. It doesn't take you long to see why he shot up the board. He screams Jaden McDaniels, Jeremy Grant levels of potential. Utah would really be building something scary here. He would be playing alongside Walker Kessler in the frontcourt, someone that established himself as one of the league's elite rim protectors in just his rookie season. At 10, we've got the Dallas Mavericks. Here, they would really be deciding between 3 guys: Derek Lively, Cason Wallace, or Grady Dick. With the position they're in, trying to compete right now, they go with the safest selection, one of the safest in the entire draft, Kansas wing Grady Dick. As just a freshman, he was one of the best shooters in the country, shooting over 40% from 3 while taking 6 attempts a game, a feat few freshmen have done. He also pairs this with a 6'8" frame, which gives him a much higher ceiling than most of the other prospects we usually see with this skill set. Vegas over the last couple of days has been moving Dallas's title odds a lot. They clearly see some significant moves on the horizon, and with that being the case, they go with a guy they can nearly guarantee will give them solid rotation minutes from day 1. At 11, the Magic are back on the clock. If Grady's available, that is the most likely selection. But with that not being the case, they go Kentucky point guard Cason Wallace, who's really emerged as the heavy favorite. The 6'3" guard is one, if not the top on-ball defender in the class. He also has a really solid shot from outside. The Magic now add 2 high-level options to a backcourt that needs a lot of help. Based on all the odds, reports, and consensus mocks, this really does feel like the odds-on favorite 1 through 11 order, but we need to remember the draft is dependent, meaning one selection has a massive chain reaction, but we should expect something similar. From this point on, things get extremely speculative. No one seems to have a strong grasp of what the Thunder want to do at 12. There's a few candidates, Kobe Bluffkin, Bilal Coulibaly, and Keontae George, but ultimately, we've got them going with Derek Lively. This selection really sticks out when comboing both this team's needs and Presti's strategy over the last 5 years or so. Lively is one of my favorite prospects in this draft, and his stock really makes no sense. We are dealing with a 7'1" center that has a 7'8" wingspan and the lateral speed to be an elite defender at the NBA level. This year he averaged just 5 points a game, but his shooting during the pre-draft process has really opened the eyes of many, suggesting that it might be a much different story at the NBA level. We're gonna have to see that on the court to really buy in, but his defensive ability alone makes him an elite prospect in this draft. The Thunder didn't have a single center touch the court in the play-in. Yeah, they're going to be bringing in Chet Holmgren, but they still need some more big bodies. They address that here while still going for upside. It's a match made in heaven for Presti. At 13, we've got the Toronto Raptors, another team that could go a million different directions. But as we approach the draft, a slight favorite has emerged. Indiana point guard Jalen Hood Schifino. He's a great defender with an elite physical profile that fills a projected need for Toronto. The Raptors have a lot of contracts coming to a conclusion. A rebuild seems to be on the horizon, but at the very least, it seems like Fred VanVleet is likely on his way out. This selection makes sense for really any of the outcomes. Some other options would be Coulibaly or Keyonte George. The New Orleans Pelicans at 14 are interesting. As we've said, they're not trying to stay here. They're trying to go up to get Scoot Henderson. But in the event they fail to do that, and the picks play out as we have them, they go with one of the most talked about prospects recently, Bilal Coulibaly. He's really skyrocketed up the board, and he's even getting attention inside the top 10. ESPN reported that despite his unavailability to work out for teams, his stock appears to be in a good place. The Thunder and Jazz both sent decision makers to Monaco this week to take another look at Coulibaly, where he bounced back from a difficult first game in the Pro A Finals with a strong performance in Game 2. If you weren't aware, he's actually a teammate of Victor Wembanyama right now over in France. He's bringing high-level defense and a ridiculous profile at 6'8", 230 pounds, and a 7'2" wingspan. Don't be surprised if a team in the top 10 takes a chance. The Hawks are at 15 and go with Baylor shooting guard Keyonte George. George is bringing one of the most promising shot creating skill sets in the entire draft, but he doesn't come without concern. Despite his 15 points a game this season, he shot just 38% from the field, an efficiency that we rarely see turn into a high-level NBA player, but sometimes the talent is just too much to ignore. Atlanta needs more self-shot creation outside of Trae Young. We also saw him allude to on his podcast that the Hawks might be focusing on a more three-point centered offense, something that George would be a willing participant of, having got up an insane 7 3-points a game this season. At 16, the Jazz go with my favorite prospect in this entire draft, Jordan Hawkins. I think at 16, this would be by far the biggest steal. The Jazz are not walking away with both Hawkins and Taylor Hendricks. That just doesn't seem fair. I've seen very few prospects blow away the eye test like Hawkins. A lot are under the impression that most of his stock is coming from UConn's title run. That's not the case, but it's that sentiment paired with the skill set he brings to the table that puts him in this bucket of tournament three-point shooting standouts, a bucket that has a terrible track record in the draft, but he shouldn't be in there. He just might be the best shooter in the draft, but quote-unquote shooter is a little deceiving of a generalization. He's the best contested shooter in the draft, the best movement shooter, and the best off-ball mover in this entire draft. Yes, he brings a thin frame, but this isn't something that's immune to change. He was a solid defender in college. It likely won't be a strength in the NBA, but also not a detriment. The upside will come from his growth as a shot creator, but that buzzword gets extremely overused with Hawkins, considering how good he is at creating space and solid looks without the ball in his hands. There aren't many players that have had this floor and ceiling combination get treated like this ahead of the draft. He should be going higher than this, but here, the Jazz get great value. I still think there's a chance he could go way higher, but right now Vegas has Keyonte George as the heavy favorite to go ahead of him, so it's hard to project him too much higher right now. The Lakers are at 17, which is always a fun spot because we know whoever gets taken here will suddenly be deemed the steal of the draft, and any suggestion otherwise will get torn apart by their fan base, especially if they land someone like we project here, Arkansas shooting guard Nick Smith Jr., one of the toughest players to evaluate and project. He's someone that came into the season as a top recruit, a projected top pick in the draft, but after dealing with injury and efficiency struggles, shooting less than 38% from the field, he slipped down the board. But with a chance he gets back on track, he's not going to have to wait too long, in this case, lands with Los Angeles. With teams likely to test the Lakers' limits in regards to matching Reeves, as well as Smith bringing sneaky playmaking upside, this selection really balances risk and reward, which is likely the Lakers' goal for this draft. The Miami Heat grab a prospect that really embodies their culture on the court. French forward that's been playing in the Australian NBL, Ryan Rupert. The 6'6" wing brings a 7'2" wingspan to the table and lockdown defense everywhere on the court. A pretty big favorite for the Warriors at 19 has emerged. Michigan 2 guard Jett Howard, son of Juwan Howard. Another player whose stock is really not hard to track down. He's a 6'8" guard with a super smooth shot from outside. As a freshman, he shot 37% while taking over 7 attempts a game. Another great prospect that Kerr will use to warm the bench. There's not much to go on for the Rockets at 20. Right now, we've got Leonard Miller, the 6'10" forward that shined on the G League Ignite this season, averaging 18 and 11. Now we reach the Nets at both 20 and 21, and they go with Noah Clowney and Kobe Bluffkin. Michigan wing Bluffkin is a player that's actually getting a lot of buzz recently to go much higher than this. ESPN reported that we could see him as high as 8. There's other teams like the Jazz, Thunder, or Raptors that have some rumors connecting them to Bluffkin, but right now this kind of feels like the median projection. He's bringing a quick, twitchy offensive game that has shades of Tyrese Maxey, but also promising defense on the other end. It's that combination that's really enticing teams at the top of the draft. It really does feel like the range of outcomes for him is nearly the entire first round. Then they go Alabama forward Clowney, who made a name for himself this season with his defensive versatility. After earning an invite to the green room, rumors are starting to heat up that he won't be falling too far, and right now one of these Brooklyn spots really does seem like the likely landing spot. Someone that's just skyrocketed up the board in the pre-draft process is UCLA wing Jaime Jaquez. He's really emerged as one of the frontrunners for Portland here at 23. Now, he's the oldest player to come off the board so far, but he's coming off a season where he averaged 18 points and 8 rebounds. He's really a master of none, but nearly flawless, especially with confidence rising about his shot from outside. With the Blazers really looking to compete, few players in this class are going to be winning contributors at the level Jaquez will be from day one. At 24, if Chris Murray's on the board, it doesn't seem like there'd be much hesitation from Sacramento. He's the twin brother of their 4th overall pick from last season, Keegan Murray, who had a really solid rookie year, all while Chris Murray stepped up into being one of the best bigs in college basketball, averaging 20 and 8. This range from like 23 to 25 is shaping up pretty well to project, especially the Grizzlies at 25, who go with Brandon Podziemski, Santa Clara sophomore that exploded onto the scene, averaging 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists, shooting 44% from 3. Insane numbers. He paired that with an incredible combine that instilled confidence in his playmaking. With the jaw situation and Tyus Jones going into the final year of his contract, it really does seem likely the Grizzlies target another playmaker here. The last 5 picks are nearly impossible to project with any confidence, as this area really bleeds into the second round. But right now, we've got the Pacers going with foreign center James Nagy, who has an absolutely ridiculous physical profile. The Hornets go with the youngest player in the class, bringing crazy upside Gigi Jackson. The Jazz go with Pepperdine forward Maxwell Lewis. The Pacers go with Ohio State wing Bryce Sensabaugh, and the Clippers finish it off with a guy that's really climbed up the board over the last few weeks, knockdown shooting 2 guard out of Belmont, Ben Shepherd. Now, following the draft, there's still some big names on the board, such as Derek Whitehead and Trace Jackson Davis, 2 guys that have huge ranges of outcomes on draft night, especially Whitehead, who's bringing top-end talent paired with serious injury concern.